Welcome to the Handyman Pros Radio Show. Home improvement repair and maintenance tips from the pros. This week's episode, it's the dark side of wood rot. Well, we're glad you're here this afternoon. It's Larry, and I'm here with my buddy John. John, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Larry. How are you?
Unbelievable. You believe that?
No, I don't believe that.
Well, it's normal. All situation normal, all foobarred up. Anyway, today we are going to talk about the dark side of wood rot.
And what would that be, Larry? What's the dark side of wood rot?
Well, John, when's the last time you looked at wood rot? It's pretty dark and nasty, isn't it?
It is. It is. I'll grant you that.
So, folks, we live here in outside of Atlanta, Georgia, on the north side, and I think we have to say, in our experience, how much wood rot do we actually run into?
A ton of it. All day long.
Yeah, all day long. I think the question is, can we find a house without it?
That is a good question, and most people don't even know they have it.
And they don't even know they have it. And so that's one of the things that when we talk about wood rot, we want to give you some of the signs of what you're looking for when you look at wood rot, and what are the signs to how do you take care of it, and what are some of the things that are going to fix it. John, give them a synopsis of what causes wood rot.
That is a good question, Larry, and from my experience, what I've seen is once water enters into the wood itself, it starts to actually deteriorate the cellulose in that wood. And then pretty soon it gets up behind the paint where you can't even see it, and it just starts to eat all that wood away behind the paint. Most people don't even know they have it because the paint is still there. It's just like a shell on top of it, but it gets in the back and it starts to eat away. Now, after it dries out, you get dry rot because you still have these organisms in there that start to continue to eat that wood away.
Right. So the wood rot is actually it's a fungus that grows up in the wood. It actually eats the wood up. Is what I've done my research is what has shown us. So, but the root causes we want to say is because water sits in and around the wood as a general rule. Would you agree with that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So one of the things when we're looking at wood rot is we want to make sure when we're solving the wood rot problem, let's change that narrative a little bit. But when we're talking about the wood rot problem, generally we find, at least here in the greater Atlanta area, you find a lot of wood rot in darkened areas and areas that get wet on a regular basis and never really dry out. We know this is a southern U.S. thing largely, but even in the north it's going to be the same thing. If you have areas that don't get a lot of sunlight, you're more prone to, and western as well, you're more prone to have wood rot in your wooden things. Now, that's just my take on it. Is there anything you can add there, John?
No, the other thing is that most people, and that is the cause of it. It's the water, but a lot of people, they have their sprinklers that are hitting their house a lot, and they don't even realize that it's penetrating that wood.
Right.
Yeah. So you get rain and all that kind of stuff, but every single day you've got people have their sprinklers on.
Yep. And it gets the wood wet.
And it never ever dries out.
Never dries out. Never really dries out. So this is a little bit of a circle back. We've seen, so as you all know, John and I work as handymen. We go out and we do a lot of to-do lists, and some of the things that we do are a lot of wood rot. We do a lot of wood rot repair. If you had to describe it, John, is there anything that you've seen certain people do, say other contractors, where they just, how would we want to call it, hide the wood rot? Yeah,
it's a dangerous thing to do, is just to kind of paint over it, or to see if they can just cover it up. It really does need to be, let's say, pulled back and exposed and cut out.
Right.
Otherwise, it's not going away.
No, but both, I know you've experienced this, I've experienced this as well. You go up to a site, or you go up to a window, or I saw one up over a door that was really horrible. But I had one just the other day. I was working on a front door. The people said they had a little threshold problem. Well, what they had was a wood rot problem where literally it had rotted the threshold. It was gone, and the contractor that was the painting contractor had come in, and he had caulked and painted, and he had caulked and painted, and he had caulked and painted. This probably happened, the house was built in the mid-'80s, so it's been almost 30 years, maybe 35 years, that this had happened probably, 4 or 5, maybe 6 times. Beautiful thickness of paint on there. And the only reason that the homeowner even noticed that it happened is she bumped the vacuum cleaner against it and it punched a hole in it. And so she's like, what's that? So she goes down and puts her finger in it, and guess what happened?
It just went right through.
Went right through
everything.
Yep. She pushed her finger right through the bottom of the sill. So that's one of the things that I guess we see a lot of wood rot that people just don't actually address in what we consider to be a timely fashion, because wood rot takes how long, John? It'll
take a while. Wood can get wet. It needs to dry out. But if it continues to go, it'll take a while to really start to rot out. But
put a time frame on it. If you were talking about to where we got with this point where she pushed her finger all the way through it.
Oh, that's a long time.
How many days? Years?
That's probably a couple, 3 years, 4 years, maybe longer.
Yeah.
I've got some wood. I found some wood rot on my house. That wasn't there. I just checked it probably a year ago, 2 years ago, but. I got some more. I came back. Now that's been about 2 years. It's about 3 inches big. So
the point that we're trying to make is that wood rot is not something that happens
overnight.
It doesn't happen in the period of weeks as a general rule. It takes a really good amount of time for it to develop, and a good amount of time means it's at least 6 months or more. I'd say more in the years range. That before you get, and when you get to severe damage, it's long time. I would say in this case, that thing's been rotting probably for 10 years.
It's always to me. It's all it's kind of it's similar to like termites. Termites will take a while. They can take your house down, but it'll take a while before termites really do a whole lot of damage. But they get in and you don't see them.
And
wood rot is the same. It gets in, you really don't see it.
You don't see it.
Contractors will caulk a paint over it, or you'll have some painting contractors that'll take care of your house. And you really need to be aware of how devastating that can be after a few years of just covering that up.
Worst wood rot you've ever seen?
Well, I think the example you gave
is a bad one. I've seen one that's worse. So go into a woman's condo. It happened to be a condo, and they actually had a water infiltration problem in this condo. Long story, but the homeowners association come in and re-waterproofed outside. Well, she had a little drywall problem on her windowsill. Didn't really think all that much of it. She's like, "Oh, we just need to have this drywall replaced." By the way, she says, and I'd pushed my finger through it. So I'm in there and I said, "Do you mind if I just rip out the rest of the drywall?" And it was a small section. It was probably 4 inches square or so. So anyway, long story short, she goes, "Yes." I pushed my finger through. The sill plate had rotted through, so that was a 2x4. It had rotted down into the vertical of the actual framing of the condominium and up underneath the windows, and it literally, the whole corner underneath the window, probably a foot on one side, a foot on the horizontal, and because we're on radio, we have to describe this, right? A foot on the horizontal and a foot on the vertical were completely rotted away. So this was the whole support, or most of the support segment for her actual window in her condominium. It was at this point that because it's a condominium and you're dealing with a homeowners association, things like that, I backed away. I said, you need to contact the homeowners association, because this water problem is not an internal water problem. We actually were at the point where we could have pushed our finger through the outside wall. It was a stucco finish. We could have stuck our finger through the outside wall. We weren't going there. So that's when we backed out. But that was a time that's some of the worst wood rot I've ever seen in a job that I've come upon, if you want to call it that. So point being is, what's the point?
Well, it's easy to ignore and not see. I think is one of the takeaways with this. If I was to,
but it can get really expensive,
and it can get very expensive, and it's one of those hidden things. It's like I said, it's kind of akin to like termite damage, where it just sneaks up on you, and pretty soon you've got a major
repair.
Major
repair.
Yep.
So one of our goals is you know here on the Handyman radio show is we're really out trying to help you save money and make good decisions. And so we want you to understand that wood rot is something that it's not something to just be ignored just because. You need to at least address it. Because as you know, John, give them a quick example of how we repair wood rot.
Yeah, so wood rot can be a major repair, or it can be, as simple as when you find it and can stop it right away. You can cut it out.
Right. You
can fill it with some wood putty or Bondo, or scab in some new pieces of wood or PVC if it's outside in a very wet, exposed area.
Yeah, so really a relatively simple repair, we would call it. And in fact, I mean, if it's really not really bad, if it's say just a corner edge, you could actually scrape the wood rot off and reprime it and repaint it.
Right.
In a very, very simple sense.
Yes.
We could do that. Now, generally when you and I do it, I know when I do it, I take Bondo and I reform quote reform the wood, sand it all down, make it smooth, make it square again, and redo it.
Right.
And but that's I guess basically because I'm getting paid to do it. If I were a homeowner and it was a piece that wasn't really that bad, I might not do that just because it's easier, right, and quicker. But I would stop the cancer, because I call wood rot to be cancer.
Right.
Because when wood rot when you have one piece of rotten wood and it's touching another piece of wood, what happens?
Yeah, it's going to transfer. It's going to transfer that moisture to the two pieces of it's the other piece of wood that's next to it
that gets caught.
Yeah.
And so that's why I somewhat refer to it as cancer.
It
will grow.
It'll
grow and spread. And in really severe cases, as you know, there's also some products you can actually spray on it to actually kill the fungus.
Yep.
To
that's
put
important.
out there. Yeah, and that can, if it's a really bad case, you can kill the fungus. The easiest way to kill the fungus is take the moisture out of it. Mm-hmm. That's the simple way. The second way is, and this is something everybody has access to, is what's that, John?
Is antifreeze.
Yeah, just get some antifreeze from
antifreeze or borax will kill the fungus. So that's a tip to remember to really kill it before you fix it.
Right. And just all you do is just spray it on.
Yep.
You literally spray some antifreeze on, let it dry out again, because if you're going to bond Bondo to it, obviously it needs to be dry.
Yep.
But once it dries out after that antifreeze is on there, the ethylene glycol and and you do need to use ethylene glycol antifreeze. You can't use you have to use what you and I would refer to as traditional antifreeze.
Yeah.
But you can do, once you do that, it kills the fungus. It won't come back. It won't grow back. You can do your patch job, if you want to call it that, however you choose to do it. We here in outside of the greater Atlanta area, we really, if we're doing a replacement job, we use PVC. Mm-hmm. And we use PVC, or at least I do. I know you do as well. But we use PVC because PVC doesn't rot.
Yep, and that's really important. I'll just add that around the bottom of my garage, and where that brick molding meets, where it's close to the concrete, that's when the water will bounce up into that wood and start to rot away. So there's no sense of replacing that with wood nowadays with PVC brick molding and that kind of thing. So if you do have those kind of repairs that need to be made, make sure that the contractor or the handyman that you hire gets,
or yourself,
or yourself. You take advantage of these new products, these PVC products, and then you can rest easy after you get that done.
Yeah, because basically, like in that case, and that's a great example, by the way. So you'll see that on door trim, you'll see that on garages, any place that's close to the ground. You just get splash. It's just normal rain splash, and God forbid you have flooding or any kind of thing like that. But generally, like I've had several people ask me, really simple, right? How come it only rots down in the bottom 1 foot?
Right.
Or something like that. Something and you will see it down. You'll look down, you go, why is the bottom rotted out? Well, it's because of that splash and that it just gets wet, it never dries out. So depending on the degree, but I did one yesterday. Actually, it's funny that we're sitting here talking about this, but I cut out the bottom about 1 foot piece of wood out, and I replaced it with PVC. And as I said to the homeowner, I go, you don't ever have to worry about this one rotting again. And done, right? Simple, done, and actually a permanent fix. when they build doors and windows today they still build them largely out of wood, but there are some PVC doors and window frames that are out there. Windows in particular, there's a lot of PVC windows.
Well, the newer windows and all that kind of stuff, which will be on a different show, we made out of, even the wood windows these days are made out of, treated wood.
Correct.
Not perhaps pressure treated, but they will treat that wood that will last a lot longer than years ago. So modern building products have really come a long way.
Right. So these are just some of the tips and tricks that we wanted to show you on the wood rot segment. But we're glad that you're with us, and we'll get to more stuff coming up. It's time for the listener question portion of the show. Hey, John, did we get any email questions this week?
We sure did. One of the questions that we got from a listener here, actually in Atlanta, is Chris K. And he was asking about, what kind of things that he should be looking at to let's say winterize, getting his house ready for the winter.
For the winter. All right, perfect. Well, one thing that we need to discuss when we talk about winterization is it really does depend on which portion of the country that you live in. So last time I checked, Atlanta's a somewhat moderate climate. We do get a number of frozen days here in the climate. Basically we'll get some days below zero, and we can get some days down into the single digits. But having lived, John, did you live in Chicago? Of course you did. And I lived in Western New York. So we know up there gets pretty cold. It gets cold for long periods of time. So we're going to talk a little bit about both. What were some of the major things that come to your mind when you think about it, John?
Yeah, so when I kind of visually am thinking when I walk around my house and I'm looking to go through the winter on that property is to look at the gutters, number one.
Right.
I got to get those things cleaned out because I've had full gutters before, and then what happens is if the water gets in there and it freezes, it's a mess.
Big trouble.
You're in big trouble.
Yep.
Obviously, we'll hit that on some other shows, but you can get ice dams and things like that going on.
It'll pull the gutters down if you're not careful.
It'll all kinds of nasty stuff. I'll walk around the house and I will, do an inspection.
Do a basic inspection. That's
your
always the place to start.
Look at your windows. Look at the caulk on your windows. Make sure that your windows, if you have sash windows, that they're closing correctly. Check around the doors. See that the weather stripping's okay around the doors, because that's where a lot of the cold air is going to start to come in.
Correct.
And you don't want to open those doors in the middle of the winter and start to fix that.
No, it's not the time, is it?
It's not the time.
No. So a lot of these are timely. These are timely things. So when you're doing them when the weather's still temperate and you're not out freezing your derriere off, if we want to call it that. So start with that inspection. Walk around. Things to look at. Gutters. Any kind of water drainage issues. You want to make sure the water's moving away from your house and it's moving away from any place where you walk, because we're very concerned about safety and also trying to save you a little bit of money and saving you a lot of aggravation. So water that's running across the sidewalk, good or bad? Probably not so good, particularly in the colder climates, because it's going to turn to ice. But it's bad enough here in Atlanta. So we want to get the water off of places where it doesn't need to be. Same thing with your gutters. What about inside, John? Maybe something like, should we be changing HVAC filters, things like that?
Absolutely. And a good inspection on your HVAC system and your furnace. Make sure that it's
actually works.
It works, and that it's there's no big visible cracks in it that's leaking carbon monoxide. I hope that you've got detectors in your house and things like that, and a licensed person can come in and take a look. But that is very important to get that done.
Yeah, I can't stress just starting it, especially here in the South and even in the North to a degree. You haven't run your system for 3-4 months in general, or maybe longer than that, just depending where you are. Make sure it comes on. Burn it, as I say, burn off that smell. There's a certain smell that comes when you haven't run it in a while. Burn that smell off. Make sure everything's working right.
And I will add that even in your air conditioning and heating systems, if your air conditioner or your heater doesn't come on, a lot of times it's the batteries are bad in the thermostat.
Batteries are bad.
So always check those, just like when you're checking your batteries for your smoke detectors
alarms,
and those kind of things. Check the batteries on your thermostat, because if those go out, it's not going to work, and you're going to panic and think that your whole system is gone.
Is gone, and it's not. It
And
can be
it's
very,
not.
very simple. We'll do a show on batteries coming up sometime because, John, we've got a little bit of experience with batteries
That's right.
from other things that we do in our lives. So we've got some ideas on batteries. But we've got a pretty extensive list of things to go on, and we'll offer this out to you free. If you send us an email at handymanprosradioshow.com, that's handymanprosradioshow.com, questions at, we'll send you our free list and we'll do them seasonally, and we'll also, this is a huge topic, so we really don't have time to talk about it completely. It would encompass multiple shows through the year. So we will put this actually in print. It'll basically be in checklist format. You can go down and just check, and apply the things that work in your area or things that don't work in your area. So that was a quick answer to some of the questions from Chris K here in Atlanta. And we want to thank Chris for sending in that email, by the way, and we'll be going on from here.
All right, in this week's segment of our tools and associated products, we wanted to talk to you about how we can help you with your projects. And Larry, I'd just like to ask you if what kind of tools come to mind that really stand out that you've really enjoyed using.
Well, John, it always reminds me of that old thing. This show is brought to you by beer. No, sorry. We're not doing beer. We don't suggest that you actually do drink and do your projects on it. John, there's one product, we kind of laugh about this one, right? So you're gonna get a chuckle out of this. What was the tool of 2018 for you and I? It was that small electric blower.
That is an awesome. I never thought you introduced that to me. So
yeah, I came on it from I was watching a guy. So these are small electric blowers. They're battery powered blowers. There's multiple brands. We're not going to name a brand, but they run. My particular one is an 18-volt blower, and yours is too. And it's just small. It's a small handheld blower. We'll put some pictures on the website of the ones that we're using. But these small little electric blowers, and I think what surprised me with it was I bought it because I was actually doing some work on a roof and I didn't want to carry the gas powered blower up there, right? And I saw this thing. I actually saw a video of it. Guy was doing it and he's cleaning off the roof with this blower, and I looked at it and said, oh, that's kind of cool, and not to get in on the business side, but tools for us are just kind of like a passion and a thing that we buy, and we buy lots of tools, or at least I do. I don't know if you do, John. Yeah. So anyway, I was looking at this thing and I said, I'll take it. If it doesn't work out, if it's junk, I'll take it back, right? So I bought it at a big box store. Took it up there on the roof, cleaned this thing up, and I was amazed how much power.
I am too.
I mean,
when you showed it to me, it was incredible.
Yeah. So anyway, we started using this thing, and I think what surprised me the most about this little electric blower was the other uses of it. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
I mean,
no kidding.
It's just this little thing. It's probably about, I don't know, it's probably a pound, and it just is small. And gosh, I don't know. I mean, I'm blowing out people's houses with it. You can use it inside. It's electric, right? So there's no gas smell. It's none of that stuff that you have with a big gas-powered blower. You want to take it up on the roof, clean your gutters out, or do whatever. You can do all of that stuff with this blower. Shoot, man, do you clean your car out with it?
I actually do. I actually open up the hatch on my car and I'll blow the inside of it out from the front to the back. I can't believe it. And then I'll vacuum the rest. But with carrying stuff around and things like that, it comes.
Yeah, you get dust and all that.
I actually use that thing to blow the deck off with.
Yeah,
I haven't used the gas blower I have in I don't know how long, because I just don't like dealing with
the gas
all
and
that,
the mess and the smell
and the whole
deal. And and that's been the big. I'll tell you, that's been one of the best tools that I've bought. Probably the one I've used the most. And it's the other uses that I've been surprised of what I can use it for that have really shocked me. Like, for example, we just talked about it, but cleaning out your car. I go into the cab of my truck. I literally just blow out the cab of my truck. All the dust and dirt and the peanuts and all the stuff I've been eating gets blown out the door. But it's awesome. It's just been awesome. And then we use it on the job. Another thing, and we can belabor this forever, we're not going to, but it's just like I get done with my job, and I know you do this too, right? You've been cutting wood with your saw, right? What do?
Blow the
thing off. All the dust is gone.
And before I leave somebody's driveway, I blow their driveway off with it, as much as I can, and wherever the sawdust is, and everything else. And it does a fantastic job For what that thing is, it's just an incredible.
It's an incredible tool. So, folks, we would just suggest that you go out and think about it anyway. Think about going and getting yourself a little electric blower. There's a bunch of them available from the various different manufacturers. But it's been the tool that I have gotten the most value out of, I guess I want to say, in the past 12 months.
So there you go, folks. That ends this segment for our tools and associated products, and hopefully that this helps you with your projects that are coming up.
So the end is near, John. Is there anything going on this week that we need to talk about?
Well, I think it's just my schedule coming up. I've got some more trim work and crown molding and things like that.
We've got that big wood rot job that we're doing with that door, so we're going to be taking that door out. We'll make a report on that coming up in a future show. This is a big project we've got going on. Anything else in the life? The wife's good, the kids
Everything's
are good.
Great. Everything's great. And looking forward to doing the next show.
Can't wait. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this podcast and have derived some value from it, here's 4 things you can do. 1, tell your friends about this podcast. 2, hit subscribe on your podcast player. While you're there, leave a review. Feedback is so helpful. 3, subscribe to our newsletter by going to handymanprosradioshow.com and click on the subscribe button. We'll inform you of upcoming events, shows, and give you actionable tips for maintaining your home and property. 4, send us an email with your questions to questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. That's handymanprosradioshow.com. That's our show for this week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.